Now let's have an overview of ADA parking spaces. The Americans with Disability Act was signed into law by President George W. Bush in 1990. For our purpose, it tells the minimum number of accessible parking spaces are required for a building, and if a property is not in compliance with the ADA in Texas, it can be reported to the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations under the architectural barriers section. And they actually have a link on the website where you can do everything online. Um, the city does not have any regulatory authority if a business is not in compliance with the ADA. As I said, those violations should be reported to the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations. And I can email you the link if you need additional information. Here are the requirements for an ADA parking space. You can issue a violation if the parking space doesn't have these exact requirements. We only need the vertical sign, but actually these specs make sure that the spaces are truly accessible for the people who need them. First requirement is that the space must have a 60-inch vertical sign posted in the front of the parking space. ADA parking spaces for cars should be 96 inches in width, and ADA parking spaces for vans should be 132 inches wide. So that gives you more room to open the door and unload and load wheelchairs. In Texas, any new construction requires for them to mark the access aisle as a no parking zone. This is a new law that went into effect in 2021 because there's a lot of confusion about people parking in access aisles. I'm sure you've encountered that many times. But it's not required to go back and add this wording to old parking spaces, only for new constructions. But for our purposes in issuing citations, the only thing we need is that vertical sign. If that vertical sign is posted in front of the parking space, then we can issue a citation. Watch out for some stores. Sometimes rather than have the sign on a pole in front of a parking space, they may put it on a cement wall or pillar that's not directly in front of a parking space, and the hearing officer will dismiss that citation if you write it. So report that to the Texas Department of License and Regulations or email me and I will take care of that for you. Now look at this picture. As you can see, each of these parking spaces has their own individual vertical sign. Then this is required for enforcing each of these parking spaces. A row of parking spaces cannot have one sign on the end and another sign on the opposite end with arrows pointing to each other. This is not considered enforceable. So always remember, if you see a row of ADA parking spaces, each space must have its own sign. Now you look at this picture. We have 4 parking spaces, but only 3 have a sign. And it's pretty obvious that the first space should be also marked as an ADA parking space. I mean, it has a ramp, it has an emblem on the ground, it has an access aisle. But if a citation was issued, it wouldn't be upheld because the sign is missing. Plus, technically, you could pull into this space and not see the emblem on the ground when you pulled up. So that's why they only make enforceable parking spaces to have the sign posted at the front. And again, you can report any missing signs to the building's property management or to the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Now, in order for the parking space to be enforceable, it must have a sign with the international symbol of access. And different formats are okay, as long as it has the wheelchair emblem. Okay, now for our next discussion, we will discuss placards, and license plates.